Survivors take refuge in an abandoned prison from walkers after the end of the world. Hello all. This is Jacobson and this is a short retelling of the first and second episodes of the third season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous seasons at the links in the video description. Thank you so much for your participation and 800 subscribers. Hopefully we'll keep it up and by the next video we'll have 900 subscribers. Once this video gets 100 likes, I will release the next installment. Enjoy watching it. The group has been on the run, moving from house to house through rural Georgia for the last 8 months. Carl has now become more proficient with firearms. Daryl seems to have officially replaced Shane Walsh as Rick's right-hand man and Lori's pregnancy is near term. Moving as a cohesive unit, Rick, T-Dog, Daryl, and Carl breach a house, eliminate the walkers inside, and search the place to make sure it's safe for the group to camp out there. After the search is over, the others enter the house. After a short while, everyone starts to settle until T-Dog looks out of the window and notices a group of walkers approaching. Everyone runs to the cars and they drive off. The cars stop on a highway where Carl and Beth keep watch whilst the group discuss where they are headed. They open a map and discuss how they have been moving in circles for months, trying to escape the herd that passed on the Green family farm. T-Dog and a few others head to gather some water, while Daryl and Rick go hunting. While hunting, they walk down a railroad, and observe a prison full of walkers. Rick cuts an opening in the fence so the group can get inside the prison yard. Glenn and Daryl then tie the fence shut so no walkers can enter behind them. They start to run, stopping at the prison gates. Rick says someone has to get past the prison yard full of walkers to close the gate on the other side. Glenn offers, but Rick says he will do it. Rick tells Glenn, T-Dog, Beth, and Maggie to distract and kill the walkers through the fence. He tells Carol, Daryl, Herschel, and Carl to shoot walkers from the guard towers. Rick straps a rifle to his back and is handed some chains. Lori mounts the fence. Rick heads towards the gate. He kills a few walkers on his way there and then secures the gates. He then enters a tower and with help from the rest of the group, shoots the remaining walkers in the yard to secure it. Having taken the yard, the group sit down for a fireside meal and, at Herschel's request, Beth and Maggie sing an old Irish drinking song. Daryl, while keeping watch at the front gate, starts to give Carol a massage, as she stated her shoulder hurt from the assault rifle's recoil. She starts to jokingly flirt with him, and then they head back to the fire. After patrolling the fence, Rick makes plans to take the prison entirely, stating that the presence of many walkers in the prison grounds means the prison must have fell early in the apocalypse, meaning there may be a vast supply of items such as food, weapons and ammo left behind. The next day, Rick, Daryl, T-Dog, Glenn, and Maggie take the interior while the rest serve as a distraction. Everything seems to be going well until they run into walkers wearing riot gear. After a series of ineffective attacks by the group, Maggie stabs an armored walker up under the helmet, unlocking their weakness. Quick work is made of the rest and the group advances into the prison. They enter cell block C, take out the few remaining walkers lurking inside, and find it to be secure. As everyone starts to set up in different cells, Carl starts to show an interest in Beth, then goes off to find his own cell. Elsewhere, the formerly hooded figure with the sword, Michonne, and Andrea aren't faring well. They've taken refuge in a deer cooler. Andrea is sick with influenza and Michonne makes Andrea take some aspirin she recovered from a store. Andrea presses Michonne to abandon her, but she refuses. They conclude they must move on as a group of walkers are advancing and Andrea will die if they stay, so they head off out towards the woods. Lori confides in Herschel that she fears the baby might be stillborn, and that it might be born a walker. She fears that Rick and Carl hate her, and that she sometimes wishes she had died on the farm. Herschel assures that it isn't true and that the baby will love Lori. Nonetheless, she makes Herschel promise that if the baby is a stillborn or if she and the baby both die in childbirth not to hesitate, and put them both down. The group finds a plethora of weapons and suit up to further explore the prison. Rick, Daryl, T-Dog, Glenn, Maggie, and Herschel move deeper into the interior while Carl stays behind to guard the women. All seems quiet at first, but suddenly they run into several groups of walkers. In the darkness and confusion, Glenn and Maggie get separated from the group. When it's finally safe to venture back out, Herschel tries to find the two but is bitten on his calf by a walker that only appeared to be dead. The group then reunites and assists Herschel in getting out of the corridor. They take refuge in the cafeteria, where Rick, in an attempt to save Herschel, amputates his leg with a hatchet, causing him to go into shock and pass out from the ensuing blood loss. Then, 5 shadow figures appear in the adjacent room. Daryl prepares to fire, but realizes they are not walkers but are actually survivors living in the prison. He shines his flashlight in one of the prisoners' faces, to which Axel, one of the prisoners, exclaims, "Holy shit." After the traumatic event of Herschel losing his leg after he was bitten, the prisoners that have been hiding out in the broom closet of the cafeteria come out, noticeably uneducated about the apocalypse. They mention that they had been locked in the broom closet when riots broke out by one of the guards, Tomas being given a pistol to protect the 5. Rick and company initially leave the prisoners be, taking Herschel back to cell block C. Upon leaving Herschel to Glenn and the rest, Daryl points his crossbow at the corridor as he sees the prisoners following them. A standoff occurs, and soon Rick intervenes. The 8 of them go outside. The prisoners are in disbelief over Rick's group being able to kill at least 50 bodies. They also show they'd never known that only the damage and/or destruction to the brain will kill a walker, as well as the fact that a bite is not needed to turn. Soon, Tomas begins demanding that the prisoners be let back into cell block C, due to their having been in the prison longer. Rick instead demands that Tomas' group abstain. Soon, Axel begins to propose a compromise of moving into a different cell block. Rick and Tomas eventually make a deal. In exchange for half of the prisoners' food supplies, Rick, T-Dog, and Daryl shall help clear out a different cell block. First, Rick and company take half of the supplies back to cell block C. The group of 8 then begins to go over what they have to fight with. In the beginning of the clearing, Rick uses a signal to attack but the prisoners stormed ahead, attacked with poor fighting technique against the walkers, focusing more on the torso than the head. However, they eventually get in the habit of striking the brain. In the middle of fighting, however, Big Tiny tries to retreat but ends up being scratched in the back of his shoulder, a part that couldn't be amputated. A short argument ensues over what to do with him, only to be interrupted abruptly when Tomas savagely kills Big Tiny. Meanwhile, Maggie, Beth and Glenn are busy trying to assist Herschel. Glenn had been put to the task of making sure Herschel doesn't come back if he doesn't make it. Glenn frequently tries to convince Maggie to be prepared, and Maggie tries to convince Beth to not get her hopes up. Carl, having been assigned to organizing the food, instead, he returns with a small amount of medical supplies that he obtained from the infirmary, a risky move to go on his own. He claims that he killed 2 walkers, which only worries Lori. Soon, the argument leads to Carl bluntly telling his mother to get off his back. The women notice this, looking at Carl. Before he leaves, Lori gives one last comment of praise for finding the desperately needed supplies. Rick and Daryl have agreed to kill Tomas given the first wrong move. Arriving near the destination cell block, Rick tells Tomas to open only one of the double doors. However, Tomas doesn't listen, instead opening both doors at once, resulting in the walkers pouring into the room. During the fighting, Tomas takes a swing at a walker, killing it but in the process takes another swing at Rick. Tomas then pushes a walker into Rick, attempting to get him killed. Daryl, fortunately, steps in and kills it. Within moments, the walkers are all killed, and a short discussion leads to Rick splitting Tomas' head with his machete. Andrew retaliates by attacking with his baseball bat, only to be knocked down easily. He then runs into the corridor, which has now been cleared, leading to Rick pursuing, leaving Daryl and T-Dog to watch Oscar and Axel. After Rick ends up chasing Andrew into an enclosed yard of walkers, he shuts and locks the barred gate behind Andrew, leaving him inside of the space. Andrew pleads with Rick to let him in, but Rick coldly refuses. He closes the inside door behind him, and all that is heard from Andrew is screams of terror. Carol requests that Glenn come with her outside. She reveals that she wishes to select a female walker to practice a C-section on, knowing that if Herschel even survives, he won't be able to help Lori deliver the baby, and that she'll probably have to perform a C-section on Lori due to Carl having been born that way. Glenn distracts the rest of the walkers, giving Carol time to drag the female walker in. As Carol begins her dissection of the female walker, someone is watching her from the woods. Maggie sits with Herschel to watch him as he sleeps. After a few minutes she finds that he's stopped breathing. Lori then performs a successful CPR on him. Rick then comes back to Axel, Oscar, T-Dog and Daryl, threatening to kill the former pair. Axel pleads that he and Oscar aren't violent like Tomas was, begging that they be left alive. The three then turn to Oscar, who refuses to beg or plead. Rick realizes that Axel's words are true, and leaves the pair to the now cleared-out cell block. Axel shows deep sorrow at the sight of his fellow prisoners laying right outside of their cells, executed, only hearing T-Dog's final suggestion of taking the bodies out and burning them. Upon returning to their group, Rick, T-Dog, and Daryl find a now unresponsive Herschel inside the crowd. Sitting alongside Herschel, they eagerly await the man's fate. Herschel's eyes open, to which Maggie and Beth begin to cry tears of relief. Lori and Rick begin to talk on one of the fenced-in catwalks outside. Rick says they'll begin to clean out the bodies the next day, which Lori responds by saying it'll give Carl space to do whatever he does these days. Lori says that today was a good day. Rick tells her he doesn't think she's a bad mother, to which Lori replies, "Wife is a different story." Rick touches her on the shoulder, which almost brings her to tears. Rick tells Lori that the group is grateful for her saving Herschel, then he walks away. The end of the first and second series. As soon as this video gets 100 likes and 10 comments, I'm releasing a sequel.